My name is Dave Boyce. I'm a former naval officer. I'm a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. I have a degree in control systems engineering, and I worked in electronics warfare and nuclear engineering jobs as a surface warfare officer. While I was in the service, I found out about this targeting program. This is psychological warfare. This is a profession, just like there are Navy ships that do, surface warfare, submarine warfare, anti-air warfare. We've got people that, in the infantry and the Army, they do that sort of work, and we've got, an Air Force that does strategic bombers. Those are the things that you kind of see on the news. This program deals with mind control and human-machine interface weapons. They did so much work back in the 50s and 60s that dealt with the human body and how do we, how does the auditory information, visual information, tactile information, how is that represented in the body, and how can we manipulate, read that information? Well, we've gotten to the point with the modern computing that we're able to accurately depict the body's basically all the senses of the body. So the personality overlays, that's basically a recording. You're recording a person that's in a specific emotional state. So say rage, or even something as simple as stubbed your toe, or morning sickness, or you've got a cold. You can take that raw sensory information and then process it into a way that it generally fits into any bioelectrical system. And so you provide a bioelectrical input to the body, and then that person will experience that physical sensation that has been recorded previously. We have, like in the movie industry, they have what they call a Foley artist, and they have just libraries of all the different sounds that you could possibly want to use in a movie, or say like stock video footage. Something that's in a library of information that can be used. Well, this program uses the same sort of library. It's a pre-planned existing library of information that can be played onto a person's bioelectrical system. And V2K is kind of a colloquialism for technologies that can provide auditory input into the body. Nowadays it's crystal clear interface with the human bioelectrical system, so it's not quite necessarily just a hit. It's more complex. You can get all of the whatever school of psychology you follow. If it's whatever different psychologists will say there's like 7 basic human emotions or whatever. You can get into even some of the submodalities of each of those with this technology. But separately, the synthetic telepathy, that is the more advanced human-machine interface system that completely interfaces with the body's bioelectrical system. So not only can you get auditory information from that system, you can get gustatory, smell and taste, as well as full-on tactile. Every square inch of your body can be, they can, in the centers which perceive that information in the brain, are stimulated, and you can create any, like we said before, it's a recording or live information of any sort of touch that you can imagine. With this technology, you can just as sure as it feels like you're being cut or burned or punched, or they can create any touch sensation with this technology. It's kind of a completely bi-directional system that could hurt you. They can hurt you while they talk to you and hurt you at the same time. So it's full-on torture with this system. So when you're talking about creating kind of like a conflict within the person, that's like some of the, if you start any process, it starts out people doing it by hand, and then eventually they automate it. So a lot of this is done with algorithms. So, a lot of the, in the past, say in the, whatever it was, 60s, 70s, 80s, where they would have to do this type of co-intel type of attack, it might be labor intensive. You might have to hire, 30 guys or 40 guys to pull one of these programs off. So at some point, they wanted to automate it and go, repurpose their operatives for other assignments. And so what they came up with was what they call a psychotronic mind virus. That's kind of passé term or outdated. But it's just the idea that you automate this psychological warfare process. So you have a system that is able to interface with the body and provide the sensation of touch. And for a lot of targets, what they'll do is they'll split the body in half and make all the touches on the, say, one side of the body, they'll condition it to like no, or they'll condition the right side of the body to yes. And between just with those two words, being able to communicate no and yes, you can cause a lot of inner turmoil just by being contradictory with the person. So I guess the best way to explain it is they used to have these games, were question and answer games that you would play with a computer. I think it was back in the 80s or something like that. And it was the forerunners of like artificial intelligence. And just by playing a yes/no game, you can cause a lot of strife with the person, contradicting them, and then anything that would build confidence, you try to negate that, and then anything that would cause them to be upset, you reinforce that. Or depending on where the program's working, they try to induce manic and depressive states. One of the key one of the key elements to any psych warfare program like this is sleep deprivation. So when you're in a vulnerable state, it's just one of those things that they'll amp up. And two, from my experience, it seems like if you're concentrating on something and you're intent, if you're doing work that involves a lot of physical movement or concentration, it seems to be more of your focus is taken away, and I think it's a matter of focus. So when you're lying down to sleep, you're less focused, and then it's just a situation where when you're in a different state of mind like that, less focused, that the system is able to have a larger input, and so that it kind of goes to work on you in that sense. But I'm one of those people that clearly thinks this is worldwide, ground penetrating type of radar system, that there's just nowhere you can go that you're not going to be clearly linked with this system.
And I think something that might be insightful for people who don't know this already and maybe have a hard time understanding, that it can affect everyone around you too. That they can do little tricky things with the people around.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality that you have to explain this to the public. We're so lucky with the Snowden movie that they demonstrated kind of the 3-hop system. So you think in that movie they show graphical user interface. Think of it like a web browser, like the tabbed browsing they now have, where you can have 1, 2, and 3 tabs. Imagine the first tab is what they call the first hop. So say an average person has 40 contacts, in their social network, on their Facebook page, or among their friends and family. That's their normal social network. Well, then each of those 40 has 40 again, and that would be the second hop. So that second tab would have 40 times 40. And then the third tab, of each of those, however many of those contacts work out to, and they say, okay, for one target, if you monitor one person, now you are allowing yourself to gather all the phone data from I think they said 1.5 or 2.5 million people just by monitoring one person. And so it seems like there's a similar situation here. If they take, say, whatever it is, 10,000, 20,000 targets, and they're putting those targets on this system, if they go 3 hops out, they kind of give themselves permission to really put everyone on it. And it's such a stretch for people to understand that it's not just TIs. It really could be everyone, just in the same way that they have given themselves permission to do dragnet surveillance on everyone in the United States, just from monitoring a few people's phone messages, And sort of the same, that bit where they were trying to discredit people, most of the public is not aware that this technology exists. The thing you got to understand about this program, it's all about trickery and deception. This is a system that has been researched since the 70s and, has been obviously funded year over year, and it's been perfected, kind of to what we're experiencing now as TIs.
There is likely a berserk wing of the artificial intelligence community that intentionally or unintentionally could use artificial intelligence to kill all of us and hurt us the entire time that we are dying.
Guys, if your assessments here are correct, these are very covert weapons, aren't they?
That's correct. There's no entry or exit wound. How they're designed is to make the target feel like they're crazy, like they're imagining things.
There have been experiments that prove that both acoustic waves, directed waves in the ultrasound, primarily the ultrasound band, but also electromagnetic directed energy, especially pulsed nanosecond energy beams in the millimeter band through something called the Frey effect, which converts electromagnetic energy into an acoustic band wave that can be within or without or outside of the audible band.
In ordinary sound perception, sound that goes into the ear canal gets amplified by the small bones in the middle ear and then gets to the inner ear where the cochlea resides, and in the cochlea is converted to electrical impulse. But in the case of a microwave auditory effect, the source is electromagnetic. So if you expose the biological tissue to a pulse of microwave energy, the tissue expands and induces a vibration. This is being used for mind control.
They figured out how to biocode these microwaves so that it can attack specific individuals.
They basically analyze your DNA and they then use supercomputers to encode the signals.
It's not just a very disturbing high-pitched noise, but there might even be voices or a message, a continual message that people have been victimized by.
The use of gene editing techniques, probably most notable today, the use of CRISPR, Cas9, gene editing and gene scissoring techniques to be able to modify the genetics and genomics that contribute to the way our brain is structured to allow real-time access to read from the living brain and write into the living brain remotely, through the cloud, through the web.
The nuclear bomb totally transformed warfare. There are those that now say that we're on the cusp of something similar.
Weapons guided and driven by artificial intelligence are no longer science fiction.
We've already entered into a neuroscientific and neurotechnological speedway. It's an international speedway. Multiple lanes, many countries, multiple vehicles, multiple techniques and technologies that are being used within military intelligence operations.
Using technologies like gene editing and brain-machine interfaces to enhance military capabilities and control its own people.
It says that China's People's Liberation Army is developing high-technology weapons designed to disrupt brain functions and influence government leaders or entire populations, firing electromagnetic beams.
Mind reading, with all its unthinkable promise and peril, made real.
The really big thing is hacking human beings. To hack human beings, you need a lot of biological knowledge, a lot of computing power, and especially a lot of data.
That's been from the beginning of DARPA's information technology mission, and it continues to this day.
The future of mind control, and the future being right now because these experiments are being done, is using gene editing tools.
The use of gene editing techniques, gene editing and gene scissoring techniques to be able to modify the genetics and genomics that contribute to the way our brain is structured to allow real-time access to read from the living brain and write into the living brain remotely, through the cloud, through the web.
Quantum computers harness the peculiarities of quantum physics to process information in ways far beyond the reach of even the most advanced classical computers.
This power-hungry cabal of billionaires and politicians has long plotted to enslave the masses, and now they're making their move.
We're now in the early stages of the fourth industrial revolution, which is bringing together digital, physical, and biological systems.
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change
what we are doing, but it changes us.
And eventually AI won't just model the low level what the shape is, but it'll model the cell and the organ and the organism.
If you have enough data about me and enough computing power and biological knowledge, you can hack my body, my brain, my life. You can reach a point when you know me better than I know myself.
We will come to accept entities that are not biological as conscious. But it's not going to be, okay, machines on the right side of the room, humans on the left. If you talk to a biological human, they will have lots of non-biological processes going on in their body and brain. Those computers will be out in the cloud, so the thinking of that, quote, person isn't even just in their body and brain, even in the non-biological portion. It's out on the cloud. So it's going to be all mixed up. There's not going to be a clear distinction between human and machine. The bottom line is we are one human-machine civilization.
It will not only change how we communicate, how we produce, how we consume, it will change actually us, our own identity.
Not growing the virus at all, but just getting the sequences, getting the appropriate protein and sticking it on a self-assembling nanoparticle that is much, much more immunogenic.
Injecting robots into a human's bloodstream sounds terrifying. But what if I told you science has developed so far that they are actually doing it on purpose?
Making the mRNA is really easy and really cheap, and that's the magic of this thing. We just need to mess around. There's a lot of lipid nanoparticles, and some are very self-assembling.
Let's take a look at a 2013 presentation delivered by Israeli scientist Dr. Ido Bachelet from Bar Ilan University, boasting about the development of programmable nanorobots thanks to the funding of Pfizer.
So this syringe has inside it 1,000 billion robots. So these robots are each 50 nanometers. 50 nanometers is about 2,000 times thinner than the thickness of your hair.
As a hostile act. The technologies are what makes you nauseous. In the past, in a situation like that, she might have been in the future, we want to give our Marines non-lethal options where they can say, no, he's not armed, maybe threatening, but I don't want to kill him, or I don't want to kill him or them. Use your sound wave rifle, I guess you could call it, and down they go. Yeah, they're in prison, huh? Now you're going to see an execution.
I want to ask a question about Havana syndrome, or AHIs, these debilitating neurological conditions. State Department personnel, intelligence community, military, even families. Have directed energy weapons been used against U.S. government personnel?
Oh, I do not believe in the conclusions that we've seen in the past, and I think evidence in time will prove me correct, that these things happened by accident, that these things were a result of mass hysteria or some pre-existing conditions. Now, in some cases, maybe. But I have no doubt in my mind that something caused people to be suffering from these things in different posts around the world, not just limited to Havana. There's a lot of work still going on. I think we're going to learn a lot more about it over the next few years as more work goes into it. But I've met some of these people. I've interacted with them for years. And I can't explain every case, but I think there are most definitely cases where there is no logical explanation other than the fact that some external mechanism caused them to suffer brain injuries that in many cases look like they were hit over the head with a baseball bat or assaulted somewhere. We can't ignore that. And in the meantime, what we have to ensure is that whether they were State Department personnel or working for some other agency, that those people are getting the treatment and the support that they need. And it's a top commitment of mine to make sure these are people we sent abroad to serve our country. They were harmed in the service of our country, and they deserve our ongoing support, not being accused of things like mass hysteria or, they're just...
It's government gaslighting.